Hello, and welcome to Narrated Archives, where we discover enduring, classic, and sometimes forgotten short stories from the public domain. My name is Sally Barron, and I'm your guide and narrator on this literary journey. And I'm so glad you decided to listen in. Today, we're sharing a small sampling of the vast amount of short stories by the prolific author O. Henry. O. Henry, whose real name was William Sidney Porter, born in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1862, was a prolific American short story writer known for his witty tales and famous surprise endings. After being imprisoned for embezzlement, he adopted the name O. Henry and moved to New York City, where his writing career flourished. He wrote hundreds of short stories, including the beloved holiday classic, The Gift of the Magi. His stories resonated with readers for their clever plots and urban settings. Despite his literary success, his final years were marked by ill health, financial difficulties, and alcoholism. He died on June 5, 1910, in New York City. His body of work has been translated into many languages, establishing him as a globally recognized literary figure. Many of his stories explore themes of coincidence, fate, sacrifice, and the ironies of everyday life. His trademark twist ending became so renowned that it is sometimes referred to as an O. Henry ending. Our first story is set in New York City with an ironic ending. After 20 years. The policeman on the beat moved up the avenue impressively. The impressiveness was habitual and not for show, for spectators were few. The time was barely 10 o'clock at night, but chilly gusts of wind, with a taste of rain in them, had well nigh depeopled the streets. Trying doors as he went, twirling his club with many intricate and artful movements, turning now and then to cast his watchful eye adown the Pacific thoroughfare, the officer, with his stalwart form and slight swagger, made a fine picture of a guardian of the peace. The vicinity was one that kept early hours. Now and then you might see the lights of a cigar store or of an all-night lunch counter, but the majority of the doors belonged to business places that had long since been closed. When about midway of a certain block, the policeman suddenly slowed his walk. In the doorway of a darkened hardware store, a man leaned, with an unlighted cigar in his mouth. As the policeman walked up to him, the man spoke up quickly.
"It's all right, officer,"
he said reassuringly.
"I'm just waiting for a friend. It's an appointment made 20 years ago. Sounds a little funny to you, doesn't it? Well, I'll explain if you'd like to make certain it's all straight. About that, long ago, there used to be a restaurant where this store stands. Big Joe Brady's restaurant. Until 5 years ago," said the policeman. "It was torn down then."
The man in the doorway struck a match and lit his cigar. The light showed a pale, square-jawed face with keen eyes and a little white scar near his right eyebrow. His scarf pin was a large diamond, oddly set.
20 years ago tonight," said the man, "I dined here at Big Joe Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum, and the finest chap in the world. He and I were raised here in New York, just like two brothers, together. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning I was to start for the West to make my fortune. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again exactly 20 years from that date and time, no matter what our conditions might be or from what distance we might have to come. We figured that in 20 years, each of us ought to have our destiny worked out and our fortunes made, whatever they were going to be." "It sounds pretty interesting,"
said the policeman.
Rather a long time between meets, though, it seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friends since you left?" "Well, yes, for a time we corresponded," said the other. "But after a year or two we lost track of each other. You see, the West is a pretty big proposition, and I kept hustling around over it pretty lively. But I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive, for he was the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget. I came 1,000 miles to stand in this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old partner turns up."
The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lids of it set with small diamonds.
3 minutes to 10,
he announced.
It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted here at the restaurant door. "Did pretty well out west, didn't you?"
asked the policeman.
"You bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was kind of a plotter, though, good fella as he was. I've had to compete with some of the sharpest wits going to get my pile. A man gets in a groove in New York. It takes the West to put a razor edge on him."
The policeman twirled his club and took a step or two.
"I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around all right. Going to call time on him sharp?" "I should say not," said the other. "I'll give him half an hour at least. If Jimmy is alive on Earth, he'll be here by that time. So long, officer." "Good night, sir,"
said the policeman, passing on along his beat, trying doors as he went. There was now a fine, cold drizzle falling, and the wind had risen from its uncertain puffs into a steady blow. The few foot passengers astir in that quarter hurried dismally and silently, along with coat collars turned high and pocketed hands. And in the door of the hardware store, the man who had come 1,000 miles to fill an appointment uncertain, almost to absurdity, with the friend of his youth, smoked his cigar and waited. About 20 minutes he waited, and then a tall man in a long overcoat, with collar turned up to his ears, hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man.
"Is that you, Bob?"
he asked doubtfully.
"Is that you, Jimmy Wells?"
cried the man in the door.
"Bless my heart!"
exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both the other's hands with his own.
"It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here if you were still in existence. Well. 20 years is a long time. The old restaurant's gone, Bob. I wish it had lasted, so we could have another dinner there. How has the West treated you, old man?" "Bully. It has given me everything I asked it for." "You've changed lots, Jimmy." "I never thought you were so tall by 2 or 3 inches. Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20. Doing well in New York, Jimmy?" "Moderately. I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob. We'll go around to a place I know of and have a good long talk about old times."
The two men started up the street, arm in arm. The man from the West, his egotism enlarged by success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other, submerged in his overcoat, listened with interest. At the corner stood a drugstore, brilliant with electric lights. When they came into this glare, each of them turned simultaneous to gaze upon the other's face. The man from the West stopped suddenly and released his arm. "You're not Jimmy Wells," he snapped. 20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug. "It sometimes changes a good man into a bad one," said the tall man. "You've been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. Chicago thinks you may have dropped over our way and wires us she wants to have a chat with you. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go on to the station, here's a note I was asked to hand you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells."
The man from the west unfolded the little piece of paper handed him. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he had finished. The note was rather short. Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you struck the match to light your cigar, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow, I couldn't do it myself, so I went around and got a plainclothesman to do the job. Jimmy. As with many of O. Henry's stories, this story plays on the misinterpretation of messages and the importance of clear communication in relationships. By Courier. It was neither the season nor the hour when the park had frequenters, and it is likely that the young lady, who was seated on one of the benches at the side of the walk, had merely obeyed a sudden impulse to sit for a while and enjoy a foretaste of coming spring. She rested there, pensive and still. A certain melancholy that touched her countenance must have been of recent birth, for it had not yet altered the fine and youthful contours of her cheek, nor subdued the arch though resolute curve of her lips. A tall young man came striding through the park along the path near which she sat. Behind him tagged a boy carrying a suitcase. At sight of the young lady, the man's face changed to red and back to pale again. He watched her countenance as he drew nearer, with hope and anxiety mingled on his own. He passed within a few yards of her, but he saw no evidence that she was aware of his presence or existence. Some 50 yards further on, he suddenly stopped and sat on a bench at one side. The boy dropped the suitcase and stared at him with wondering, shrewd eyes. The young man took out his handkerchief and wiped his brow. It was a good handkerchief, a good brow, and the young man was good to look at. He said to the boy, I want you to take a message to that young lady on that bench. Tell her I am on my way to the station, to leave for San Francisco, where I shall join that Alaska moose hunting expedition. Tell her that, since she has commanded me neither to speak nor to write to her, I take this means of making one last appeal to her sense of justice, for the sake of what has been. Tell her that to condemn and discard one who has not deserved such treatment, without giving him her reasons or a chance to explain, is contrary to her nature, as I believe it to be. Tell her that I have thus, to a certain degree, disobeyed her injunctions, in hope that she may yet be inclined to see justice done. Go and tell her that. The young man dropped $50 into the boy's hand. The boy looked at him for a moment with bright, canny eyes out of a dirty, intelligent face, and then set off at a run. He approached the lady on the bench a little doubtfully, but unembarrassed. He touched the brim of the old plaid bicycle cap perched on the back of his head. The lady looked at him coolly, without prejudice or favor. Lady, he said, dat gent on der order bench sent yer a song and dance by me. If yer don't know de guy and he's trying to do de Johnny act, say de word, and I'll call a cop in 3 minutes. If yer does know him and he's on de square, why, I'll spiel yer de bunch of hot air he sent yer. The young lady betrayed a faint interest. A song and dance, she said in a deliberate, sweet voice that seemed to clothe her words in a diaphanous garment of impalpable irony. A new idea, in the troubadour line, I suppose. I used to know the gentleman who sent you, so I think it hardly be necessary to call the police. You may execute your song and dance, but do not sing too loudly. It is a little early yet for open-air vaudeville, and we might attract attention. Aw, said the boy with a shrug down the length of him. Yer know what I mean, lady. 'Tain't a turn, it's wind. He told me to tell yer he's got his collars and cuffs in that grip for a scoot clean out to Frisco.
Then he's gonna shoot snowbirds into Klondike. He says you told him not to send round no more pink notes, nor come hanging over the garden gate, and he takes this means of putting your wise. He says you're refereed him out like a has-been, and never give him no chance to kick at the decision. He says you're swiped him, and never said why. The slightly awkward interest in the young lady's eyes did not abate. Perhaps it was caused by either the originality or the audacity of the snowbird hunter in thus circumventing her expressed commands against the ordinary modes of communication. She fixed her eye on a statue standing disconsolate in the disheveled park and spoke into the transmitter. Tell the gentleman that I need not repeat to him a description of my ideals. He knows what they have been and what they still are. So far as they touch on this case, absolute loyalty and truth are the ones paramount. Tell him that I have studied my own heart as well as one can, and I know its weakness as well as I do its needs. That is why I decline to hear his pleas, whatever they may be. I did not condemn him through hearsay or doubtful evidence, and that is why I made no charge. But, since he persists in hearing what he already well knows, you may convey the matter. Tell him that I entered the conservatory that evening from the rear to cut a rose for my mother. Tell him that I saw him and Miss Ashburton beneath the pink oleander. The tableau was pretty, but the pose and juxtaposition were too eloquent and evident to require explanation. I left the conservatory and, at the same time, the rose and my ideal. You may carry that song and dance to your impresario. I'm shy on one word, lady. Juxt. Put me wise on that, will yer? Juxtaposition, or you may call it propinquity, or, if you like, being rather too near for one maintaining the position of an ideal. The gravel spun from beneath the boy's feet. He stood by the other bench, the man's eyes interrogating him hungrily. The boys were shining with the impersonal zeal of the translator. The lady says that she's onto the fact that gals is dead easy when a feller comes spelling ghost stories and trying to make up, and that's why she won't listen to no soft soap. She says she caught yer dead to rights, hugging a bunch o' calico in the hothouse. She sidestepped in to pull some posies, and yer was squeezin' oder gal to beat the band. She says it looked cute, all right, but it made her sick. She says yer better get busy and make a sneak for the train. The young man gave a low whistle, and his eyes flashed with a sudden thought. His hand flew to the inside pocket of his coat and drew out a handful of letters. Selecting one, he handed it to the boy, following it with a silver dollar from his vest pocket. "Give that letter to the lady," he said, "and ask her to read it. Tell her that it should explain the situation. Tell her that, if she had mingled a little trust with her conception of the ideal, much heartache might have been avoided. Tell her that the loyalty she prizes so much has never wavered. Tell her I am waiting for an answer." The messenger stood before the lady. "The gent says he's had the ski bunk put on him without no cause. He says he's no bum guy. And lady, you read that letter, and I'll bet yer he's a sport all right." The lady unfolded the letter, somewhat doubtfully, and read it. "Dear Dr. Arnold, I want to say thank you for your most kind and opportune aid to my daughter last Friday evening when she was overcome by an attack of her old heart trouble in the conservatory at Mrs. Waldron's reception. Had you not been near to catch her as she fell and render proper attention, we might have lost her. I would be glad if you would call and undertake the treatment of her case. Gratefully yours, Robert Ashburton." The young lady folded the letter and handed it to the boy. "The gent wants an answer," said the messenger. "What's the word?" The lady's eyes suddenly flashed on him, bright, smiling, and wet. "Tell that guy on the other bench," she said with a happy, tremulous laugh, "that this girl wants him." And finally, here are 3 very brief stories, less than 200 words each. The Distraction of Grief. The other day, a Houston man died and left a young and charming widow to mourn his loss. Just before the funeral, the pastor came around to speak what words of comfort he could and learn her wishes regarding the obsequies. He found her dressed in a becoming mourning costume, sitting with her chin in her hand, gazing with far-off eyes in an unfathomable sea of retrospection. The pastor approached her gently and said, "Pardon me for intruding upon your grief, but I wish to know whether you prefer to have a funeral sermon preached or simply to have the service read." The heartbroken widow scarcely divined his meaning, so deeply was she plunged in her sorrowful thoughts, but she caught some of his words and answered brokenly, "Oh, red, of course. Red harmonizes so well with black." Marvelous. There is one man we know who is about as clever a reasoner as this country has ever produced. He has a way of thinking out a problem that is sometimes little short of divination. One day last week, his wife told him to make some purchases, and, as with all his logical powers, he is rather forgetful on ordinary subjects. She tied a string around his finger so he would not forget his errand. About 9 o'clock that night, while hurrying homeward, he suddenly felt the string on his finger and stopped short. Then, for the life of him, he could not remember for what purpose the string had been placed there.
"Let's see,"
he said.
"The string was tied on my finger so I would not forget. Therefore, it is a forget-me-not. Now, forget-me-not is a flower. Ah, yes, that's it. I was to get a sack of flour." The giant intellect had got in its work. After supper. Mr. Sharp: "My darling, it seems to me that every year that passes over your head but brings out some new charm, some hidden beauty, some added grace. There is a look in your eyes tonight that is as charming and girl-like as when I first met you. What a blessing it is when 2 hearts can grow but fonder as time flies. You are scarcely less beautiful now than when Mrs. Sharp. I had forgotten it was lodge night, Robert. Don't be out much after 12 if you can help it." I hope these examples of O. Henrys were surprising or made you smirk or even laugh. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast app, and I would love to hear your thoughts on today's stories. You can share your comments and submit your own requests for future public domain gems by visiting us at narratedarchives.com. Check back for more stories from the public domain on Narrated Archives. Thanks for listening.